Hey, hey, hello, everyone, and welcome to our long awaited discussion for Stephen King's The Long Walk. I am your lovely host, Quana. I also go by Her Real Review, and welcome to Her Real Review, or if you are streaming on Her Real Review Reads, thank you so much for joining me. If you would be so kind, if you haven't done already, please make sure to hit the like, the follow, and subscribe to join me and the fellow book clubbers as we read books and talk about the movies that are based on the books. I have been so excited, so waiting for this particular discussion. I have been raving about this book for eons and eons, probably nostalgia, I know, but it was one of like my early Stephen King reads as a preteen and have been fascinated with it since then, have been waiting for an adaptation. It's one of the few Stephen King works that didn't have an adaptation from his early era. And yet here we are finally with an adaptation coming out, upcoming on September 12th. You can also probably catch some Thursday screenings on the 11th, which is what I plan to do. And so thank you so much for joining me as we discuss Stephen King's The Long Walk. I want to shout out to the chat real quick and say what's up to my girl Darfalina in the chat. Hello, love. Thank you so much for always being, y'all, my hair is tangled up, for being here to support. I appreciate you so much, sis. You know, you are my long lost twin that I haven't met yet. So I hope that you have enjoyed reading the book thus far. There will be spoilers. So you see right here, we are talking about The Long Walk. And I started with this image, which is the movie poster image, but it also echoes one of the earlier book covers. I absolutely love this. So we're going to be talking about the book, but also talking about the movie. And I came upstairs and left my paperback copy, but you've seen my face if you visited the channel before. You see me holding that book. You know, I actually own a physical copy. I own the audiobook. I own the digital copy. Okay, I'm all in. But let's talk about The Long Walk, because I don't want to keep you here for a long time. You guys got other things to do. It's Sunday night. Most of us are going back to work tomorrow and gotta get our mental together, which is what these boys should have did before they went on this journey onto The Long Walk. So if you are here either in the chat or if you are watching in the replay and you have read the book, drop a running or walking figure icon if you can into the chat or into the comments to let me know that you have read the book. And if you haven't, and you're just waiting for the movie, go ahead and give me a movie clapboard. Obviously, I've read the book over many years, and this was a reread that I really enjoyed doing. Some people are definitely movie-only people, and that's completely fair. Y'all know how I feel. I am definitely not a reading snob. Get it how you can. I will say I did a listen through for the audio because I hadn't read the audio. And this was a first time read for you, Darfalina. Okay. Well, we are going to have some things to discuss and you might be ready to cuss me out. But that's okay. We're going to talk about it. I wanted to pull up the audio book because I listened to it for the first time. Oh, now it's trying to get me to go by Dead Zone. And this one was read by Kirby Hayborn. So you can see that one right there. Okay. And so I thought it was a very good audiobook as well. But let's just go ahead and get right on into it. Spoiler warning. We will be spoiling the book, which means very likely we will be spoiling elements of the movie. Now, I will say this before we even get into the background, just my knowledge about Stephen King and how he works with filmmakers as it pertains to his films and adaptations of his films. And before I do that, I want to just double check, because I don't, out of all of the things I looked up in preparation for this movie, I don't know if, okay, he did not write the screenplay for this. He has written the screenplay for several of his works, but the screenplay for this was written by J.T. Molnar, who is most known for Strange Darling and Outlaws and Angels as well. That's interesting. That is very interesting, because Stephen King is someone who quite often, when his work is being adapted, especially when I think about the adaptations that came out of the 80s and the early 90s, he did a lot of the screenplays for those films. And I think that there are definitely times when that has been to the advantage of the adaptation. The most faithful adaptations often come from him. I don't necessarily know that the best adaptations come from him. When we think about the Stephen King adaptations that are the most iconic, the ones that did the best, I don't think that they were. Carrie was not. I just looked at The Shining. That, of course, was screenplay was by Stanley Kubrick as well. And I'm going to look up one more, which is The Shawshank Redemption. And it was, of course, directed by Frank Darabont. Frank did the screenplay. So I think that does say something, because when I think about some of the ones where Stephen had his hand into the screenplay, of course, they were more appealing to him because they were his babies. These books are his babies, and they were probably more faithful to the book all the way through. But I think that when it comes to adaptations, it's sometimes beneficial to have someone else doing the screenplay, because everything that works in a book doesn't work necessarily in a film. So I'm excited to see what this is going to look like, because this might mean some changes are in store for us. But spoilers nonetheless, because we're going to get into the book now. All right, so The Long Walk is one of Stephen King's earliest works. He actually worked on it between 1966 and 67 while he was a college freshman. And that makes a lot of sense. We're talking about a book that is a dystopian, and I guess I should start with a little bit of a summary at this point. He wrote this long before he ever was famous for Carrie or for The Shining. It is a dystopian novel that's set in some unknown future society that is basically ruled by a dictator named the Major. Or at least the Major is in charge of the government or the military at some point. It's a little vague in terms of how the government is run. But the Major it's definitely a dictatorship, with several points in the book mentioning people being executed for having something bad to say about the Major, or having something to say against the walk, or any of the other actions that are taking place in this society. People are squatted and they are executed. And so in this world, there is a competition that takes place called The Long Walk. It takes place in the fall, I believe. And it is where usually 100 young men age 16 sign up to participate in this walk that starts in Maine and goes the length of Maine, with only a couple of times it crossing over into New Hampshire. And the young men have to walk at 4 miles per hour. That's in the book, 4 miles per hour, which basically equates, of course, to 1 mile every 15 minutes. And it is nonstop. They cannot stop. They cannot stop for anything. If they slow below that average, then they get a warning, and then if they get 3 warnings without one of the warnings falling off, then they get a ticket. And that they're eliminated from the competition. We've talked about this before. They can lose a warning every hour that they walk without getting another one. But if they get 3 and they have 3, they bite the ticket. Okay. And there is some elusive prize that they get where basically they get to ask for whatever they want. It's money, it's fame. It's really pretty much up in the air. It's pretty much just said, what are you going to ask for? And it's very unclear what's even happened to any of the winners of the long walk, because there's this kind of shrouded in mystery where we don't really learn much about them through the course of the book. And I think this book explains why we don't hear much about those individuals. And so our main character is Ray Garrity. He is a 16-year-old young man whose mother is sick. He decides to sign up for the walk in order to alleviate himself as a burden on her, perhaps win so that he can help her. But then if he doesn't win, it will kind of eliminate them both from having to go through this process together. He's also doing this because, his father is no longer around. His father got squatted, which means he got executed. And so he's doing this to, I guess, fulfill some sense of manliness about him. It's very unclear as to all of the reasons why Ray is doing this. And it's unclear for Ray too, I think. And basically we just go on this journey with him. It's really not an easy book to spoil, simply because, like most books, you kind of go into every book, especially with a dystopian novel, assuming that your main character is going to survive because they're your way into this society and into this world. So that's what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with Ray Garrity, and we're dealing with the other young men that he meets along the way, and him grappling with his decision to go on this walk, essentially. Now, the book was first published in 1979 under a pseudonym, Richard Bachman, and it is famously a part of the Bachman books. The Bachman books are darker in tone. They typically have a darker edge, a more grittier edge to them, and they're less supernatural in nature, in my opinion. They tend to be more grounded in the horrors of humanity and less in the horrors of the supernatural, which is not to say that that's not present in all of King's work, but that is, to me, all the more present in the Bachman books. And they tend to have a more pessimistic ending versus the Stephen King books typically have a more hopeful ending. There are about 5 Bachman books, I believe. The Long Walk, Rage, Roadwork, Regulators, and I think I'm missing one. I feel like I'm missing one, but those are the main ones that I have read. Probably, other than Long Walk, my second favorite is Regulators, because it comes with like a double set where it's like Regulators, and then the flip side of that is a Stephen King book called Desperation. And a lot of people don't love those books, but I actually love those books. I don't know, again, nostalgia. But again, I just mentioned it's set in a dystopian America where each year 100 teenage boys are chosen to participate in the Long Walk. They must walk without stopping, keeping a pace of 4 miles per hour. If they slow too much, they get a warning. 3 warnings means they're shot. The last boy standing wins the prize, supposedly anything he wants. And King has said it is one of his personal favorite novels he's ever written, mine too. You can really feel how this came out of his college years, because it's raw, it's dark, and it's very much about endurance, authority, and the fear of death. Your favorite? Thinner. I knew I was forgetting one. I was like, there's at least one I'm forgetting. It might be actually more than it might be 6 or so, but I knew it was at least 5. Thinner. I really liked Thinner. I did not like the adaptation, but I really liked Thinner. One of the things I think is very interesting that makes it an interesting read, and also what I will anticipate being a very interesting experience to watch on screen, is that one of the things that makes it so gritty is King has won. Okay, first of all, King is the master of the horror story. Let's just go ahead and say that. He really is. He really, truly is. He can write a book that will keep you up at night. If you've ever read 4 Past Midnight, There's a reason why it's called 4 past midnight, because you'll be up till 4 past midnight with your like crazed. Cell, horrible adaptation with Samuel L. Jackson and Edward Norton, I believe. Horrible adaptation, in my opinion. But a book that I read that kept me up, had me tripped out, especially as we were like coming out on this dawn of like all this technology and things like that, had me really like tripped out. So Stephen King definitely has that in the bag. But I think one of the things that he gets a lot of criticism for is the way that he writes characters sometimes in a very complex way. He doesn't like a good protagonist. He likes his protagonists messy. He likes his characters messy. He likes them very nuanced. He's not afraid of giving you a racist character. He's not afraid of giving you a sexist character. He's giving you the full gambit. You can go through his I was about to say filmography, but his bibliography of works, and you will find a little bit of everything. And that is so true in this. And he's trying to capture the teenage mind. And I would imagine that writing this as a freshman in college when you're like 17 or 18 years old. I was 17 when I started college. Most kids are 17 or 18 when they start college, 19 at most probably. And like what I would imagine a 17 or 18-year-old boy's mind to be like is present in this book. It is present in this book. And it makes me really wonder what we are going to get when we see this play out on screen. So let me know in the chat what moment in the book stuck with you the most. And I guess this could also be a question that's going to show up later on, but just like something that you just would hate for them to not have in the book. What moment stuck with you the most? And I don't know that it's the moment that sticks with me the most, but in the book, we get a lot of, I think once you face death, which is what is happening with Ray, there's this moment where they're signed up and none of the boys are really going into it with their eyes completely wide open as to what it means to die. Once they really come face to face with the idea that this competition is likely to lead to their death, they all start kind of like grappling with the lives that they've had up to this point. And of course, we see this most in Ray's mind, with him having moments of regret and flashback and guilt. And I think what strikes me as interesting is just like how you view your life when you know that it's at its end. Here you have a 16-year-old boy. He's not really experienced much. Everything really boils down to his relationship with his mother, his father, which he doesn't really remember much of, and his girlfriend, which is all very elusive to him and wrapped up in feelings of like frustration and lust. And so I would like to think that and hope that the film really captures that. That's what the book does for me most, is it really grapples with how do you sum up your life when you begin to think on your life. How are you focused on the things that you have regrets about? And then what do you do about that? And if it's too late to do anything with that, then what does that mean to you? Hey, Chu, welcome to the discussion. We are talking about The Long Walk, and right now we're on the book, but I will be talking about the movie very shortly. But it's so good to see you. I know you're probably like, dang girl, where you been? All of the people celebrating on the sidelines stood out for me, and the ending also stuck with me. The ending, I cannot get out of my mind. And I hope that it ends. That's the only way for it to be a true horror, is for it to end exactly as it is. If they end it any other kind of way, I mean, I'm sure that there's other ways they could end it and make it dark, but like that ending is so dark. And I go back and forth with what I think the ending really means. Absolutely. Hello, Mother. Hopefully I can distract you as you journey Y'all say hi to my mom in the chat. But let's go back to the idea of like all the people celebrating on the sidelines stuck out for me. And I want to talk about this when we talk about the director of the film, because I think that that is one of the things that I hope he captures, because it gives very much like where you can see that this film is a precursor to the Hunger Games, and the director, Francis Lawrence, is the director of the Hunger Games. So I think if anyone's going to really capture what that means, like people are on the sidelines with their families. There's like a whole family having a picnic with the little kids, and they're just all eating their peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and having a good time. Then like that is absolutely, you know, something that it feels very current. I think as horrifying as it is, every time I pick up this book, and when I was younger, this would never, I would be like, no, people wouldn't do that. Like people wouldn't just be sitting, like treating it like it was nothing, treating it like it was, not even, I don't even know if mom, I don't even know if you can see the chat, but Darfelina said hello, by the way. It now we know that we are living this, and I don't think we're far off from exactly as this book plays out. And so one of the questions I had was, how political and reminiscent of our current political climate will the film be? Because it feels like we could have the long walk in a few years. It feels like we're ever steadily getting closer and closer to being the kind of society that would let something like this play out. You know, it wouldn't start, I don't think, on like Channel 5, CBS or something like that. It would definitely be like something on the dark web or on Twitch or something like that. But we're not far off. I mean, you've got people like Mr. Beast recreating Squid Game. And again, this is like a precursor. All of this is like this Stephen King was tapping into, of course, he was inspired by dystopian works that had come before him, like William Golding's Lord of the Flies and, 1984, things like that. But then everything that we've gotten since then is building off of this as well. You said you don't see that by Hi Darfelina. That's so sweet. So, I mean, I definitely think that we 100% could end up with people on the sidelines watching these young men go to their death and treating it like it was just nothing, like not even. And what dawned on me earlier today was I was reading this, the last bit of it again. But I think the other day I was like reading, and I had gone on TikTok, and a Sandy Hook commercial came on. And I was like, honestly, he could make it like this, or it could be set in a school. And it would be no different. And I think people are becoming so stoic. I don't know if that's the word I want to use, but I think we'll say stoic and just like unfeeling to seeing crisis happen again and again, that certainly dress it up like a game show, and they would definitely be there. They would 100% be there, I think. All right, so here we have, I wanted to show you that book cover, one of those early book covers where you have the major and then the last of kind of the walkers, or some of the walkers with numbers on them. And they're walking and they look very zombie-esque. Do you think the story is more about physical survival or mental survival? And yeah, I definitely think that when we're talking about this book, it's not about the physical survival, because it's time and time again, we see that it's not, there are characters that give out because of the physical, but it's way more, they check out before they check out. Y'all, my mom has become a horror movie connoisseur, okay? Like, her and my dad go to the movies on Wednesdays and they watch scary movies, and I'm just like, who are these people? Who are these people that raised me because I don't remember them being into horror movies this much. Like occasionally, like I'm almost certain my mom and I have watched the original miniseries of It before. Mom, let me know if I'm lying on you, but I know you know who Pennywise is, and because you used to terrify and and harass my niece over Pennywise, and they float down all time. Shout out to Tim Curry. I saw an interview with him on, I think it was CBS Mornings when they do the Sunday morning special or whatever. And they did an interview with Tim Curry, who we know is a stroke survivor. And he's, you know, an older gentleman at this point now in his life. Tim Curry is, I don't want to lie, but I feel, he's up there because he was born in 1946. So he's 79. And I absolutely love me some Tim Curry, y'all. I feel like Tim Curry was probably my first crush because him in The Worst Witch, I don't know why, but that was just a core memory of mine. Anyhow, yeah, like the Stephen King miniseries were staples. They were staples. You had to watch them. But yeah, I think it's definitely about the mental. And I think that's one of the things that I am excited about. I have a feeling that that the movie will show the gore, but I don't know. I just suspect it's not going to be salacious. I think as time goes on, we're going to get more into the characters' minds, and we're going to see just how much, just like in the book, how after a while, they're not even looking at the death anymore. They're not even looking at the bodies. It's just about surviving the mental. It's absolutely just about surviving the mental. All right, so the director, then we talked a little bit about the book. I'm going to go back to, don't worry, I'm going to circle back to the book again because I don't want to like leave anything on the table so much because I want to focus more on the book. But I do want to talk about the director, Francis Lawrence, born in 1971. Started his career directing music videos and commercials. His feature film debut was Constantine. He's also directed I Am Legend. So I think we're definitely from the stills that I've seen of this movie with regards to like directing and cinematography. I think we're going to get that dark dystopian look that we want. He did direct Water for Elephants, which is a romantic historical drama at that, not just a romantic drama, but a historical drama. The Hunger Games, which if you can't see, I have all of the books and all of the movies behind me because I love The Hunger Games, and Red Sparrow. I think The Hunger Games is really where we're going to see this conversation of his work, especially because he is directing the newest prequel, Sunrise on the Reaping, as well, which is coming out as well, like in the next year. Is currently in production. So he was finishing this, working on this, and doing that. And I just think they're going to communicate with each other so well. And I'm so excited because there's also another Stephen King adaptation coming out, The Running Man. And that more heavily deals in like the reality television, the performance, the skeptical of death. But this is like the precursor. It's like before the precursor of like live feed, the technology really being utilized in that, this would be what it would look like. It would look like people on the side of the road, girls showing up to cheer for the people who they want to win, sitting there with their boyfriends, making out on tops of cars, families there with their young kids, watching as boys get shot down and killed, and just continuing to eat their fried chicken, potato salad, and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Like it would 100% look like this. And so I'm excited. I think if anyone's going to do this film and do it justice, it is going to be Francis Lawrence, and I'm excited for it. Darfalina, no. Okay. I completely ignore the Hunger Games books and movies. Don't. Okay. I promise you, I would never. It's not like, now you do see Twilight on my bookshelf. Okay. That's just because it was pretty. Not to say, okay, no, I like Twilight. As bad as it is, Twilight is bad. It's bad. It is bad. But it's like a comfort bad when you want to watch something bad. So bad it's good. It's like that. The Hunger Games is good. Now, the last book that got split in order to become 2 movies because they had to milk. And I don't think that was Francis Lawrence's decision. I think that was a studio decision. It's not the best. It's still good. It's just not the best because it's not a book that was really meant to be split. And it suffers from that because it doesn't really have a storyline. You really are left off without a completion. There's not an arc that you're ending with and then another arc. I would even go so far as to say Twilight is actually a better split because there's kind of an arc with just the will they won't they of Bella and Edward having a baby. Now they've had the baby, gotta protect the baby. And it's kind of like Hunger Games should not have been split. That said, first movie, mwah, chef's kiss, plus it was filmed in the Carolinas, so gotta give it some love. But also the grittiness of that first movie, I think, was so good. But then also the second movie was just so good. So good. So good. So don't ignore it. But the first book is good. It is such a good YA. It is probably the best of like YA books from like the 2010s, from the 2000s. From the 2000s. Since 2000 to now, it's definitely top 5. If it's not the best, because I can't say it's the absolute best because I haven't read everything, but it's definitely got to be in that top 5 of like YA dystopian. And everything was trying to be that. So everything else is the son of the Hunger Games. So do not ignore it. Pick it up. Good time around Thanksgiving. I feel like the Hunger Games works out very well around Thanksgiving. I don't know why. It just does. It just absolutely does. But I promise you'll like it. But that said, he is probably the most competent person and the most consistent filmmaker to do this particular movie. Casting for the film. Let's talk about it. So we have Cooper Hoffman as Ray Garrity, and he looks very Ray Garrity-ish. This is Philip Seymour Hoffman's son. R.I.P. to Philip Seymour Hoffman, also in the Hunger Games. Sir, you will be missed. Fantastic actor. He was in Licorice Pizza. I don't know why when I was first talking about this, I was getting him mixed up with that guy who is in the British show. I just don't know why. Not that I was getting him mixed up, but I don't know why I didn't look at him at all. And I was thinking that was the guy who was cast in this. They're not the same guy, though they do have freckles and they look very kind of similar. But I think he's perfect for Ray Garrity. He looks very just like middle of the road kind of guy. Not somebody who would be too impressive, too threatening looking. So I definitely think that he is the perfect character to play Ray Garrity. Now, of course, one of the biggest things that's going to come up is David Johnson, who I absolutely adore. If you've never seen the movie Rye Lane, it's literally, I feel like, the only well-made romantic comedy that I've actually seen in the last 5 years, and he's in it. And it was absolutely, and it's a British rom-com at that, and it's absolutely outstanding. He's been doing a lot of good things as well. He was in Alien Romulus. He's got a lot of buzz off of that. Was considered from most. I did not see Alien Romulus. It's one that's still on my watch list, but I think that I've heard that he was the best part of that movie. And he definitely has a rising star. It says, well, they cast a father for him, so you'll probably be getting those flashbacks you wanted. That they did. And we're going to talk about Josh Hamilton in a second. But David Johnson, y'all, is like 32 or 35, maybe. when we say black don't crack, okay, this young man is not a young man at all. In fact, the really wild thing about it is he's actually older, if I'm not mistaken, than Mr. Aaron Pierre. He's 32. He's 32. And Aaron Pierre is 1 year younger than him. That is mind-boggling, okay? That deep dark melanin that deep dark melanin is not letting up. And I think this is the one time that I actually don't mind that they have older actors playing these young characters, because with everything they go through during the course of the walk, which is not very long of a walk, y'all, it's just a few days, and they age, I think that the maturity is going to then kind of come out, and we'll see that. And I think it'll actually be a great tool for how they age during the course of this, the stress that this plays in this. And definitely it says he absolutely was the best part of Alien Romulus. And I've heard that I really do need to sit down and watch Alien Romulus. Maybe that will be on my TBW for this week, is to go ahead and get that watched. You wish they had cast and played something other than the character who spends a lot of time saving Ray. Listen, at this point now, we just have to go ahead and say, Hollywood loves a magical Black Negro. And if the magic is simply mental magic, they love a magical Black Negro. Oddly enough, right, there are Black characters in the book, but there are not a lot, and they're not really named. I think there's really one that I can think of that happens very early on in the book. And so changing the races of the characters, it does make sense that there would be a bigger presence there, just because times having changed, times what they are. However, I also do wish that they had him playing. I'm going to do a video about the Wuthering Heights casting, the trailer, and all of the things, and kind of talk about it. But probably on both channels, probably put them on both channels. And one of the things that I've heard, a really good theory, is that maybe some, not all, some just don't give a, if my mom would, don't give a, but some don't care about any representation. And then I think some may be overcorrecting, and they don't want to cast a Black character or a character of color in a antagonistic role when there is limited representation. And so when they're doing color swapping, they will just swap and make the character of color be someone who has a lesser role, or someone who is very angelic, and you can fall into that like magical Negro or magical person of color trope, rather than giving them anything nefarious, because we can't have the only person of color be the bad guy. And it's a lot of overcorrecting, I think. So I think where I would have loved to see David play either Olsen or Stebbins, but I think also because they know that he is a rising star. Listen, I'm going to be honest. After everything that happened with Halle Bailey and Ariel, I just don't want, and also Nico Parker in How to Train Your Dragon, I just don't want them. I think people don't care about race swapping when it's not a major character, but they care when it's the main character. And at this point, I just don't want Black people to be put in harm's way mentally with social media. And so I think that David would have been a great Ray. He could have done any of these roles. He's just that good. He's really just that good. I guarantee he's probably going to be the brightest thing we see in this movie, hands down, just because he's that good of a track record. And yet I just think that would the movie be successful if they put him as Ray? And I think that's something we have to contend with, because y'all know how I feel about my Little Mermaid. Okay, I think that the CGI was bad, but I think Halle Bailey was phenomenal as Ariel, and I think the stuff with her and Jonah Howard King was amazing. The chemistry between the two of them, chef's kiss. It was giving Baby Bridgerton. There is no reason why that movie should not have made $1 million, but it made not a lot of money overseas because people overseas don't want to see Black people in roles. And I guarantee you that as they're doing overseas press, they're going to have not a lot of press with David. It's going to be a whole lot of press with Francis Lawrence and Cooper Hoffman and Mark Hamill, and David's not going to be doing as much overseas press. Okay, Mommy, I'll see you in a couple of hours. She's heading her way. Thank you for stopping by. But yeah, I don't think that, unfortunately, overseas, it's the same reason. Look what they did with Black Panther overseas, where the posters of him didn't have Chadwick Boseman's face. It had the mask instead of over here where it had Chadwick Boseman's face, because everyone knew Chadwick Boseman, and Chadwick Boseman had already been in the MCU, and he was a big star, and he's handsome and beautiful to look at. So why wouldn't you want that? But in order to sell more tickets, they didn't put his face on there and got people in that way. So it's sad. I don't want that to be the answer, but I don't know. I'm torn. I'm really torn. We have Ben Wang as Hank Olsen, and he was in the new Karate Kid movie. He was also in American Born Chinese, and so I think he's fine in the role of Olsen. I think he could play that character very well. I'm gonna come back. We have Charlie Plummer as Gary Barkovich. Doesn't he just look like somebody that you want to hate? Okay, this young man right over here, he just looks like somebody he's in the upper corner. He just looks like somebody you would want to hate. We've got Garrett Waring as Stebbins. This picture of him is giving me nothing, and I can't think of what I know him from, if anything, but it's giving me nothing. Garrett Waring. What was he in? Oh, I didn't watch The Perfectionist. I was too busy being mad about the Pretty Little Liars. Very slappable face. Charlie Plummer has a very slappable face. Okay, I think he's going to be absolutely slappable in as Barkovich. What was he in? Because there's something else that he was in that I was like, yes, he looked like he was in Looking for Alaska. Okay, I did see Looking for Alaska. At some point, I think I even read the book. I don't know when, but I think I read the book. I'm not seeing a lot of stuff that he was in other than Looking for Alaska. I think it's like the main thing that I've seen him in. But yeah, he's a very slappable face. Absolutely. And then we have Judy Greer as Raymond's mom. That's an interesting choice. I'm not going to lie. Judy Greer is not someone, and everything around Ray's family is supposed to be one done in flashback. It's very stoic. It's very harsh. It's not happy, fuzzy childhood type of vibes. And when I think of Judy Greer, I mostly think of her as a comedic actress. I mean, of course, she first kind of became popular in Jawbreaker. She's been in What Women Want, 27 Dresses, 13. I think of her as someone who is in a lot of these movies that I've not seen her do a lot of. She's been in a lot of stuff. She's been in 150 films, y'all. But I've not seen her do a lot of stuff that's like serious and grounded work. So I'm very interested to see. I mean, she was in the Halloween movies, but the later ones. But yeah, that's interesting. And then of course we have the two major male roles in here. We have Josh Hamilton as Mr. Garrity, which we mostly going to see in flashbacks. He's not very present in the book at all, but his lack of presence is constantly hovering over Ray's life. And of course, the major is Mark Hamill, and they're saying he eats this role down. Okay, they say he does a phenomenal job as the major. So I'm very excited to see Mark Hamill as the major, because he's been doing some deep dark work. And Mark Hamill as oh my gosh, what is the role I'm thinking of? Is it well, the Joker? He's in the Joker, and isn't he in Invincible? Invincible. Okay, yes. I was like, I knew I wasn't. In Invincible, I think he's gonna do great. So, which casting choice excites or surprises you the most? Let me know your thoughts. But like I said, I think the most is probably David Johnson, and I will agree with you 100%, Darfalina, that I think it's both problematic that he's playing this kind of magical Black Negro character, but also that we get to spend time, a good deal of time with him. And I would be interested to see if we get to spend some time in his mind. Because just the reports I'm hearing about how good he is in this role makes me wonder if they did some tweaking to his role in the film. So those are my thoughts kind of about the casting and about the movie itself. I think that the way that the movie handles some of the stuff. Oh, I did have a couple of thoughts I wanted to share about the movie, just kind of going back about the book, going back to the themes of like authoritarianism and the themes of like government control. There's a moment in the book that I highlighted in my Kindle where one of the characters, I think it's Baker, is talking about being a night rider and talking about it being a punishable offense and against the law, but they were living on the edge. And on the flip side, it's coming out to the other boys that Ray's dad was swatted, which means he did a offense against the government. And one of the characters says to him, it might have been Baker, that it was that he's never like someone else he knew, something happened to them, they got arrested or they stole a car, but it was a crime against the law and not against the government. And so it makes it clear in that moment that Ray Garrity's dad, that's the first time we get an inkling that like what he did was speak out against the major, and you can't speak out the major. And what happens along the course of this walk is really, it's kind of an allegory for waking up to government control. I always wonder how much will Hollywood be allowed to lean into that kind of narrative, especially in today's day and age when people really recognize it for what it's worth, because this is really an allegory for being indoctrinated into government control and then waking up thinking that somehow you are going to be absolved. All 100 boys, and I think they change it from 100 to 50 in the film, go into this thinking there is a true possibility of them winning. But along the way, all of them have to recognize and contend with the fact that the government and the people don't care about them on an individual basis. They're just there for fodder. They're there for their enjoyment. They're there for their entertainment. They don't care if they live or die. The major's not coming to save you. He's not coming to save the day. He doesn't care. And as they get awakened to it, it's the heartbreak of that really, I think, messes with their mental, because now they realize that there's no one here to save them and they're trapped. And how do you get yourself out of a situation that is designed to keep you in? I think that is the question that I wrestle with every single time that I read this. It's intriguing to me. It's beyond the question of, oh, like the very jokey thing that the PR have done, which I think is still cute, but they did a screening where the people screening the movie were on treadmills and they had to walk 3 miles per hour. They dropped it from 4 to 3 because 4 is a little unreasonable, especially when you do have to poop, in that famous scene where one of the characters has to let one go and manage to let it go in two very quick squats in order to not get ticketed. And how, they reduced it to 3, but if they dropped below, they had to leave the screening. They basically got ticketed. They got exited out. And I think that's very cutesy, right? The thought of, would you sign up? But a thinking person would think, no, there's not a way that I would really think that I could sign up for most people. But there would always be those people who, let me spend a couple of weeks on a treadmill and see if I could walk 3 or 4 miles per hour and how long I could go and time myself and keep going and think, could I outlast enough people to keep pushing if I thought that it would get me everything that I needed? But I don't think that's the interesting question. I think the interesting question is, you're already in the walk. So how do you get out of it? And is there an out? And I think in King's very dark mind at 17 years old, as he's writing this, and, probably been re-editing it during the late 70s, but let's be honest, those were not good years for Stephen King. He was heavy on the sauce during that time. So probably not as much editing going on with that, but because he was heavy on the sauce. Read his biography. One of them is up there on writing. He was on that sauce. Is that maybe you can't. So I'm intrigued to think that maybe they will keep the ending and it will stay just as dark and pessimistic as perhaps the world is feeling right now. Or will they decide to go the alternative route and say, maybe the world right now does look a little bit too much like The Long Walk. So maybe we should change the ending. I don't know. So last call, I want to know your final thoughts about the book. Okay. Out of 5 stars, give me your 5-star rating in the chat or in the comments for The Long Walk. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Are you cursing me out in your spirit that I'm mad that I made you write it? Let me know what your thoughts were and how many stars you would have rated The Long Walk. I absolutely go back to this book again and again, because even the things that are problematic that I contend with, I think there is a truth that King landed on in this, which is that, some of these people are very problematic. Barkovich definitely need to get slapped a couple of times, There's always a Stebbins, that kind of thing. Like there's always a Olsen and someone who's going to break your heart. All of these characters are so very real, and there's always something to come back to. But that is all for today's discussion. Thank you guys so much for reading The Long Walk with me, for talking about it, for talking about the movie. I'm so excited. The movie comes out September 12th. I encourage you to go see it. I'm going to take you back to the movie cover one last time. You said you enjoyed it. You gave it 3.5 stars. Yeah, I would definitely give it like a 3.5, 4 stars. It's not perfect by any means. You can definitely tell that a person who was very young and probably very like it was the early 60s, very much on cigarettes and weed, wrote this. But I definitely think it's not my number one dystopian. That goes to the Hunger Games, which definitely you got to read it now. You got to read it, but it is super good. It doesn't lean too heavy in the political. And I think in King's defense, I think he feels like, we've been there, we've done that. However it happens, people like the major always end up being in charge, and people like these boys always give up their free will. And once that happens, you have someone who's willing to do whatever they need to do to maintain control and whatever they need to do to survive. And you always have conditions like this showing up. So I think the more interesting thing is what happens to you once you're on that road. Does the long walk ever end for you? Kind of a spoiler, but kind of not. I don't want to give away too much. But guys, thank you so much for joining me. Darfalina, thank you as always. I love you, boo. I will be making my video talking about our next read as soon as my book arrives. It's delayed, hopefully, but in a teaser, we will be reading the Cabin 10. That's not what that book is called. It's called Cabin. The Woman in Cabin 10, which is getting adapted and going to be distributed. Well, it's already been adapted. It's going to be distributed by Netflix. The movie is going to be starring Keira Knightley, Guy Pearce, Gugu Mbatha-Raw, who I absolutely adore, and directed by Simon Stone. It's coming out October 10th, which is 3 days after my birthday. So perfect time for me to be watching this. So 3 days after my birthday, Libra season. So we're going to be reading this. So get your copy of The Woman in Cabin 10. I'm going to put that in the chat and on the screen. The Woman in Cabin 10. That is our next read. We will, of course, be having reading sprints. And I'm going to be coming back to talk about that very controversial trailer for Wuthering Heights and its casting. But I don't want to hold you guys. Have a great rest of your night. And I will see you guys soon. Toodles. Bye.